Elon Musk was rushing through the streets of San Francisco, his mind buzzing with plans for his next big venture, when a voice stopped him cold. "Elon? Is that you?" He turned to see a man sitting on the sidewalk, his face weathered but familiar. It was Jake, his childhood best friend, the one who had disappeared years ago. Jake was now homeless, his life a far cry from the dreams they had once shared. For a moment, the world's richest man stood frozen. What he did next wasn't just unexpected, it was a moment that would restore faith in humanity. Elon Musk had always been a man on the move. Whether he was launching rockets, unveiling electric cars, or brainstorming his next big idea, his life was a whirlwind of innovation and ambition. But on this particular day, as he walked through the bustling streets of San Francisco, his mind was elsewhere. He had just left a high-stakes meeting, his thoughts consumed by the challenges of his latest project. The city around him was a blur of noise and motion, and he barely noticed the people he passed, until one voice cut through the chaos. "Elon? Is that you?" The voice was hesitant, almost disbelieving, but it stopped Elon in his tracks. He turned, his sharp eyes scanning the crowded sidewalk until they landed on a man sitting against a building, a tattered blanket draped over his shoulders. The man's face was weathered, his beard unkempt, and his clothes worn, but there was something familiar about him. Something that made Elon's breath catch in his throat. "Jake?" Elon said, his voice barely above a whisper. The man's eyes widened, and a slow smile spread across his face. "It is you," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. "I wasn't sure. I thought maybe I was imagining things." Elon stepped closer, his mind racing. Jake had been his best friend growing up in South Africa. They had spent countless afternoons dreaming about the future, building makeshift rockets in Jake's backyard, and promising each other they'd change the world. But life had taken them in very different directions. After high school, Elon had moved to the United States to pursue his dreams, while Jake had stayed behind. Over time, they had lost touch, and Elon had assumed Jake was living a quiet, ordinary life somewhere. He never could have imagined this. "Jake, what happened?" Elon asked, his voice filled with concern. Jake looked down, his smile fading. "Life happened," he said simply. "I made some bad choices, got into some trouble, and, well, here I am." Elon knelt down, ignoring the curious glances of passers-by. "Why didn't you reach out? I could have helped you." Jake shook his head. "I didn't want to bother you. You've got this whole life now, this whole world you're building. I didn't want to be a burden." Elon's heart ached at the words. He thought about all the years they had spent together, all the dreams they had shared. Jake had been there for him during some of the toughest moments of his childhood, and now, when Jake needed him most, Elon hadn't even known. "You're not a burden," Elon said firmly. "You're my friend. And I'm not going to let you stay out here." Jake looked up, his eyes filled with a mix of hope and disbelief. "What are you saying?" Elon stood, extending a hand to Jake. "I'm saying you're coming with me. We're going to figure this out together." For a moment, Jake hesitated. Then, slowly, he reached out and took Elon's hand. As Elon helped him to his feet, the weight of the moment settled over them. This wasn't just about helping an old friend, it was about reconnecting with a part of himself that he had long forgotten. The part that believed in the power of friendship, of second chances, and of doing the right thing, no matter how unexpected it might be. Elon led Jake to his car, ignoring the stares of onlookers. As they drove through the city, Jake stared out the window, his expression a mix of awe and disbelief. "I can't believe this is happening," he said softly. "I never thought I'd see you again, let alone this." Elon glanced at him, his expression determined. "We've got a lot of catching up to do," he said. "But first, we're going to get you cleaned up and settled. Then we'll figure out the rest." Jake nodded, his eyes filling with tears. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely audible. "I don't know how to thank you." Elon smiled. "You don't have to. This is what friends do." As Elon Musk's car pulled up to one of his luxury properties, Jake's eyes widened in disbelief. The sprawling estate, with its modern architecture and manicured gardens, was a world away from the cold, hard streets he had called home for years. He hesitated at the door, his worn shoes scuffing the pristine marble steps. Elon, I don't belong here, he said, his voice trembling. Elon placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You belong wherever I say you do, he said firmly. Now come on. Let's get you settled. Inside, the contrast was even more striking. The opulent decor, the gleaming surfaces, the quiet hum of wealth and privilege, it was overwhelming. Jake stood awkwardly in the foyer, clutching his tattered bag, while Elon called for his staff. This is Jake, Elon announced. He's an old friend, and he'll be staying with us for a while. Please make sure he has everything he needs. The staff nodded, their professionalism masking any surprise they might have felt. But as they led Jake to a guest suite, the tension began to build. Elon's world was one of precision, ambition, and relentless forward motion. Jake, with his scars and struggles, didn't fit neatly into that picture. And it wasn't long before the cracks started to show. That evening, as Jake sat in the lavish dining room, picking at a meal that felt too rich, too foreign, Elon tried to make conversation. So, Jake, he began, tell me what you've been up to all these years. Jake hesitated, his eyes downcast. Not much to tell, really, he said quietly. I worked odd jobs for a while, but nothing stuck. Then, well, you know how it goes. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, I was on the streets. Elon frowned. Why didn't you reach out? I could have helped you. Jake shook his head. I didn't want to be a charity case. I didn't want you to see me like this. Elon leaned forward, his expression earnest. Jake, you're not a charity case. You're my friend. And I'm not going to let you go through this alone. But despite Elon's reassurances, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't belong. The luxury, the attention, the constant reminders of how far he had fallen, it was all too much. That night, as he lay in a bed that felt too soft, too unfamiliar, he made a decision. He would leave in the morning. He couldn't keep living in Elon's shadow, a constant reminder of his own failures. The next morning, Elon found Jake in the kitchen, his bag packed and his expression resolute. Where are you going? Elon asked, his voice tinged with concern. Jake took a deep breath. I appreciate everything you've done, Elon, really. But I can't stay here. This isn't my life. I don't belong in a place like this. Elon's eyes narrowed. Jake, don't be ridiculous. You're not going back out there. Why not? Jake shot back, his voice rising. Because it's embarrassing for you? Because you don't want your billionaire friends to see you hanging out with a homeless guy? Elon's jaw tightened. That's not what this is about, and you know it. Then what is it about, Elon? Jake demanded. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're trying to fix me, like I'm some kind of project for you to work on. The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. For a moment neither man spoke. Then Elon sighed, running a hand through his hair. Jake, I'm not trying to fix you. I'm trying to help you. There's a difference. Is there? Jake asked, his voice softening. Because it feels like you're trying to erase the past, to make everything okay again. But it's not okay, Elon. I'm not okay. Elon looked at him, his expression a mix of frustration and compassion. Then let me help you get there, he said quietly. You don't have to do this alone. Jake stared at him, his resolve wavering. For the first time, he saw the pain in Elon's eyes, the guilt that had been driving him all along. You really mean that, don't you? He asked. Elon nodded. I do. You were there for me when I needed you, Jake. Now let me be there for you. Jake hesitated, then slowly set his bag down. Okay, he said softly. But on one condition. Name it, Elon said. No more pity, Jake said firmly. I don't want your charity. I want a chance to rebuild my life on my own terms. Elon smiled, a genuine, relieved smile. Deal. Over the next few days, Elon and Jake worked together to create a plan. It wasn't about handouts or quick fixes. It was about giving Jake the tools he needed to succeed. Elon arranged for Jake to meet with a career counselor, who helped him identify his skills and interests. He connected him with a therapist, who worked with him to address the trauma and addiction that had derailed his life. And he offered him a job at one of his companies, not as a favor, but as an opportunity to prove himself. Jake was hesitant at first, but as the days turned into weeks, he began to find his footing. He threw himself into his work, determined to make the most of the chance he had been given. And slowly, but surely, he started to believe in himself again. But the road wasn't easy. There were setbacks and struggles, moments when Jake felt like giving up. The weight of his past was heavy, and the pressure to succeed was overwhelming. But through it all, Elon was there, offering support and encouragement, but never pity. One evening, after a particularly tough day, Jake found Elon in the study, staring out at the city lights. "I don't know if I can do this," Jake admitted, his voice heavy with doubt. Elon turned to him, his expression serious. "You can't," he said. "Because you're not the same person you were back then. You've been through hell and back, and you're still standing. That takes strength, Jake. More strength than most people have." Jake looked at him, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he said softly. "For believing in me." Elon smiled. "Always." Months later, Jake stood on the stage of a small community center, addressing a group of people who had once been where he was. He spoke about his journey, about the struggles and the setbacks, but also about the hope and the second chances. And as he looked out at the faces in the crowd, he saw the same spark of determination that had carried him through. Elon watched from the back of the room, a proud smile on his face. He had always believed in the power of innovation, of pushing boundaries and changing the world. But in that moment, he realized that the most powerful change of all was the one that happened within a person. And Jake, his childhood friend, was living proof of that. The journey from homelessness to hope had been anything but easy for Jake. But as he stood on that small community center stage, addressing a room full of people who had once been where he was, he felt a sense of accomplishment he hadn't known in years. His voice was steady, his words filled with a quiet strength that resonated with everyone in the room. "I'm not here to tell you that life is easy," Jake said, his eyes scanning the crowd. "It's not. But I'm here to tell you that it's worth fighting for. That no matter how far you've fallen, there's always a way back up. And sometimes, all it takes is one person to believe in you." The room erupted in applause, and Jake felt a lump form in his throat. He had come a long way from the streets of San Francisco, and while he still had a long way to go, he knew he was on the right path. As he stepped off the stage, he was greeted by Elon, who had been watching from the back of the room. "You were amazing up there," Elon said, his voice filled with pride. Jake smiled. "I couldn't have done it without you." Elon shook his head. "Don't sell yourself short, Jake. You did the hard work. I just gave you a push." In the months that followed, Jake continued to rebuild his life. He had taken a job at one of Elon's companies, not as a favor, but as an opportunity to prove himself. And prove himself he did. He threw himself into his work, determined to make the most of the chance he had been given. Slowly but surely, he began to find his footing. But it wasn't just about the job. Jake had also reconnected with his family, who had been estranged for years. It had been a difficult conversation, filled with tears and apologies, but in the end, it had been worth it. For the first time in years, Jake felt like he had a support system, people who cared about him and wanted to see him succeed. For Elon, the experience had been a reminder of the power of human connection. He had always been driven by a desire to change the world, to push the boundaries of what was possible. But in helping Jake, he had discovered a different kind of innovation, one that wasn't about technology or ambition, but about compassion and second chances. One evening, as they sat on the terrace of Elon's home, overlooking the city lights, Elon turned to Jake. "You know," he said, "I've always believed that the future is something we create. But I think I've been focusing on the wrong kind of future. Jake raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? I mean, Elon continued, that the most important innovations aren't the ones that take us to Mars or revolutionize transportation. They're the ones that change lives, that give people hope. And you've shown me that. Jake smiled. Well, I'm glad I could help. But don't go getting all soft on me now. You've still got rockets to launch and cars to build. Elon laughed. Don't worry. I'm not going anywhere. But I think I've found a new mission. Jake's story didn't just change his life, it inspired others. The community center where he had spoken became a hub for people looking to rebuild their lives, and Jake became a mentor to many of them. He shared his story, not as a tale of triumph, but as a reminder that no one is beyond redemption. One day, as he was leaving the center, a young man approached him. Mr. Thompson? The man asked hesitantly. That's me, Jake said with a smile. What can I do for you? The man hesitated, then said, I just wanted to say thank you. Your story, it gave me hope. I've been struggling for a long time, but hearing you speak made me believe that maybe, just maybe, I can turn things around. Jake felt a surge of emotion. You can, he said firmly. It won't be easy, but you can do it. And if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here. As the years passed, Jake and Elon's friendship deepened. They had been through a lot together, and while their lives were very different, they had found a common ground. Elon continued to push the boundaries of innovation, but he also made time to support causes that mattered to Jake, like homelessness and addiction recovery. One day, as they stood on the rooftop of one of Elon's buildings, looking out at the city, Jake turned to him. You know, he said, I never thought I'd be here. Not just in this building, but in this place in my life. And I owe it all to you. Elon shook his head. You owe it to yourself, Jake. I just gave you a hand. You did the rest. Jake smiled. Maybe. But that hand meant everything. Jake's story became a symbol of hope and resilience. It was a reminder that no matter how far you've fallen, there's always a way back up. And it was a testament to the power of friendship, of second chances, and of the belief that everyone deserves a shot at redemption. For Elon, it was a reminder that the most important innovations aren't the ones that change the world, they're the ones that change lives. And in helping Jake, he had done just that. The story of Elon Musk and Jake Thompson wasn't just about a billionaire helping a homeless man. It was about the power of human connection, the importance of second chances, and the belief that no one is beyond redemption. It was a reminder that sometimes, the most powerful innovations aren't the ones that take us to the stars, they're the ones that bring us back to Earth, to the people who matter most. And in the end, that's what truly restores our faith in humanity. The story of Elon Musk and Jake Thompson is more than just the tale of a billionaire helping a homeless man. It's a testament to the power of friendship, second chances, and the belief that no one is beyond redemption. It's a reminder that even in a world driven by ambition and innovation, the most profound changes often come from simple acts of compassion. For Jake, the journey from the streets to stability was anything but easy. It required courage, resilience, and a willingness to confront the past. But with Elon's support, he found the strength to rebuild his life, one step at a time. His story became a beacon of hope for others, proving that no matter how far you've fallen, there's always a way back up. For Elon, the experience was a humbling reminder of what truly matters. While his work continues to push the boundaries of technology and exploration, helping Jake showed him that the most important innovations are the ones that change lives. It wasn't about money or fame, it was about making a difference in the life of someone who had once been his closest friend. Their friendship, rekindled in the most unexpected way, became a symbol of the power of human connection. It reminded the world that success isn't just about what you achieve, but about who you help along the way. And in a time when cynicism often overshadows kindness, their story restored faith in the idea that no act of compassion is ever too small. In the end, Jake's journey wasn't just about finding a home, it was about rediscovering hope. And Elon's journey wasn't just about innovation, it was about understanding the true meaning of success. Together, they showed the world that the most powerful changes don't always come from grand gestures, but from the quiet, unwavering belief that everyone deserves a second chance. And sometimes, that's all it takes to restore our faith in humanity.